Do the whole thing.
There we go. We're officially live. Susan, you want to do the whole thing?
I'll introduce myself.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. So I'm Susan Bond, and right now, my latest incarnation, I've had a lot here, but right now what I do is I do what I call largely helping them kind of figure out how to build their businesses and market and how I got started because it'll influence it influences today and in part why
So I think
I began my
I think we are getting some connection issues a little bit on your end. I wonder if there's maybe a way to adjust the bandwidth lower. So sometimes that actually helps. Like there's that little sort of like the volume looking button on the top there that you can use to pull down the
yeah.
bandwidth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only on 2 bars. I can take it lower. Let's see. Let's see if that. Yeah, because I'm on a 5G connection. Um,
Mm, okay.
so yeah, we've got like a really intense connection. Although I can probably connect directly into my, my internet if that helps. I just would need to go get a cord.
It actually
Is that
seems.
helping at all?
Yeah, it seems better now. Sorry to interrupt, but maybe if
That's okay.
we can give it 2.0 here.
Okay, cool, great. So as I was saying, I've had lots of different incarnations in my career, and so let me start with where I started my career. So I started my career in marketing, and I spent a lot of time doing that. Spent a few years doing marketing and enjoyed it. But then what happened is the internet came along, or more specifically, the intranet. And I started working back in the mid-90s on the intranet, if people remember that at all. It was before the internet was big. And marketing took over the working of the intranet and making it work for a large company that I was working for. And that's kind of how I got my start in tech. And I liked it so much that I actually went into project management for an interactive agency. I worked for an interactive agency that built American Airlines' first website. And I ran the entire department of, at its height, 12 project managers, along with my own projects. It was at a time when shopping carts were $1 million problems and really hard problems to solve, right? Today you have a square that you can put in and anyone can have a shopping cart. But back then it was a much different. Want to pause if Dan, if you want to give me a thumbs up if everybody can hear me.
Yep. Well,
So
I had you till right now.
okay, of course, right? Um, so when I was doing project management, what I discovered was that I really loved helping coach. I discovered I was really good at the career development and career management just by accident. People had started to come to me, and that's how I ended up becoming the head of the department. I started creating tools and mentoring people, and then they said, why don't you just head up the department? And I said, great, it'll be a big raise, right? And it was. So that's how I got into it. And when the dot bomb happened, doing more career and when the company imploded and everything went down, I ended up going to work for myself as a career and executive. And that's how I kind of got my start in this world. I went back and forth between working for other people and working for myself. And then when I would work for other people, I got into HR and something OD, which is called organizational development, which is oftentimes was I helped our company work on performance. I helped with figuring out incentive programs. So after a while of doing that, I kind of decided that back into marketing, but with a really strong bent for themselves. But sometimes I work with folks who are looking for a job or wanting to, some negotiation tactics or wanting to get their job. So that's a little bit of my background. In terms of companies, I've worked for pretty much every type of company out there. I've worked for startups. I've worked with large consultancies like Accenture, Deloitte & Touche, A.T. Kearney. Companies. I've worked for imploding companies, and I've worked for myself. So that's a little bit of where I'm coming from. And I'm going to pause to get a sip of water.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we definitely are still having a little bit of choppiness on the internet connection. But is it easy for you to just plug right in? Or
yeah. If you want to give me 1 second, can you give me 1 second and I'll see if I can get the cord real fast?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
Great. I'll be right back.
Everyone else can think of questions. This is meditation time. We're not even going to edit this out.
It's very peaceful.
Yeah. So we do still have some room in the chat room here, I believe. We have 9. I think maybe there's room for one more, and not the chat room. I mean the inner hangout.
Oh, we can't.
I'll turn on the Q&A app as well.
Because then I have to go on here. No, I can't do it. Okay, well, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more of a hassle to plug me in directly. I'd have to change. Know what else? I'm hoping that I'm happy to go longer, by the way, too. I don't have anything after this if you guys want to wait a minute, because the choppiness is challenging. So would you want me to try to plug into a different computer?
I think that might actually be a good idea, because I think we're definitely missing pretty decent chunks of what
Yeah, I got it. So the only thing is, if I go to a different computer, I have to make sure I can get back in. Right.
Yep. Well, you'll have a space waiting here, and if you don't, I'll leave.
Okay, cool. I switch computers, so if I can't get back in. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll see you in a minute.
Sure.
This is funny. While we were having our meeting to discuss this, whenever we were having a conversation about how's the connectivity going, that conversation went fine. But as soon as she started saying something interesting, and I'm trying to have a meaningful meeting, that's when the choppiness would start, and it's very frustrating.
I think that's always the way it works, for some reason. So we'll just kind of put this on pause here for a moment. But actually, I guess maybe I can use this time to also say that if you haven't used this before, if you're on the outside, there's this little Q&A app that you can activate from the left side on the side panel, and that allows you to ask questions. So it also allows us to see the questions, and maybe it's only me, I don't know, but allows me to see the questions and then mark them answered or mark them spam. So, don't abuse your powers. So that's something that you can use. You can also ask questions in Slack if you'd like. So we all have access to that, but it's probably best to do it here for the Hangout itself. And so, I mean, the basic gist of this is certainly that Suzan has become an advocate for developers becoming kind of the best that they can. and I think that's pretty relevant for you guys because you're in a phase where you're going out to seek your fortune, and you've I know a lot of everyone here is probably having a little bit of imposter syndrome. I think everybody's has a lot of questions about kind of how to market yourselves as a developer, and then ultimately how to be effective as a developer in the real market, in the real world. And I think that's something that Suzan has seen a lot of, and it's definitely relevant and something that she knows well. So that's why we're excited to have her here with us. So I think until she comes back, I'll just mute it up here and hang out.
How do you use this Q&A app? I clicked on the Q&A icon on the side, and the pop-up does come up, but I don't see any space where I can like type in questions. I don't know if that's normal.
When you're inside the Hangout, you might not be able to do that.
Oh, okay.
So I think your job is actually to answer the questions.
Okay.
So we have 6 or 7 viewers here. So if anyone's on the outside wants to put in a test question, give it a shot. So something really deep and meaningful would be best. Philosophical.
Yeah, I'm trying to input a question, and all I'm getting is a drop down for questions and answered questions, but I don't see anything that actually allows me to type a question.
Right, but you're already in the Hangout, so you can just ask a question.
Well, I mean, that would just be the easy way.
The app is for the people who are viewing, who are not currently inside the Hangout.
Aha. The question is coming from outside the Hangout.
We are currently answering your question, Joseph. The answer to not spam is that no, in fact, it is spam. I'll just click the den, and we're done with that one.
So it
Works pretty
goes.
well. It did go through. That's how I knew what it was.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello.
Okay, how is that? Is that better?
I think so. There's a slight echo, but I think we can work with that.
Okay, I've got my headphones on and plugged in. I'm on an iMac here. I'm plugged into everything.
Awesome.
Okay, sorry about that. Are we good enough with my background, or do you want me to do a quick review of it, or no?
Well, we heard a lot about .bomb and project management.
Cool.
Maybe the last mile or so.
Sure. Yeah. So the last mile after the .bomb happened, right? Everything sort of in the a lot of internet sort of stuff went kaboom along with the company I was working for. And so what I started to do was doing career development and executive coaching, working for myself, and I spent several years working with executives at companies on negotiating for jobs and job promotions and all those sorts of things. And then I went back and worked for other folks in HR, and then a bit in organizational development. And then finally, I went and I ran a lot of programs like incentive programs and salary and all sorts of things like that. And then eventually I went back to marketing in these days and working for myself. And these days, a lot of what I do is really help people around what we might think of as personal branding, particularly with a career development, executive coaching sort of bent. So that's kind of the background. I don't want to go over it all again, but hopefully that's helpful. So, you know, Dan and I spent a little bit of time kind of talking, prepping before this call, and I'm going to talk a few minutes about some things that I think are good, but I'm super interactive. I do best when people are shooting questions at me, and hopefully I think Eric and Dan let you know that that's where I really excel. So I'll tell you a couple things, but feel free to raise your hand, jump in. I don't know however you guys work this. It's your show, but let me know. I'm always happy to stop and pause. So today I want to talk to you guys about 3 things when it comes to looking for a job. One, which is knowing what you're looking for. The second one is knowing your worth. And then the third one, which kind of builds on the other 2, is negotiating for yourself. So, and I understand some of you are already looking for jobs and you're in the search. So maybe some of you, this is already, you know this piece, but bear with me as we go through the know what you're looking for. I'm going to try to go into it hopefully in a little more depth. So when I work with folks, folks would come to me and say, I have no idea what I want to do. Maybe they were transitioning to a new career, or maybe they wanted something different, or they were just maybe confused. Maybe they had a bad performance review. And so this exercise that I'm going to tell you guys about has helped a lot of folks to get unstuck and figure out what they want. And it's basically, and if anyone has a piece of paper or you want to pull out a fresh, Word document or Evernote or whatever, I would love to have you guys do a little bit of an exercise. So they're going to have 3 columns. The first column, I see people's faces down writing. Awesome. The first column is your must-have. These are things that I must have in my next job, right? The next column, I'll pause. I get too excited. I have like this inner Cocker Spaniel, so if I get too fast, just like wait, put up a hand, because she gets super excited, especially when she's talking about this stuff. Okay, the next column I want you to write is like to have. Okay, cool, I see some eyeballs instead of heads. And then the third column is can't stand. So before we do this exercise, let me just talk through each column. I think you get what they are, but I want to kind of give you a little bit of my take on it. The first column, must have. These are the things that are so essential that you absolutely have to have. They could be things like your schedule, not working on the weekends, or not being on call. They could be a particular salary minimum, things like that. Right? They could be, any sorts of things, but they need to be important to you. And here's my caveat. You should not have more than 5. If you have more than 5, you may have problems in your job search. So I'm saying when you do this, you're looking to get no more than 5. The like to have is a really great repository for the things that you are tempted to put into must have. Put them into like to have. Right? Those are things that you're like, you know what, that'd be so nice to have, but if I don't have it, I'm not really going to be that unhappy. I can take the job. I can deal with it, right? It could be that you would prefer to have a commute that is less than an hour, but maybe that's a like to have. Maybe you would be willing to commute more than an hour. Or it could be remote, that you would love to be remote, but that's not, critical. And then the third one is can't stand. And I know that can't stand and must have are kind of the opposite of each other, and you think, why do I have it there? Because I put it in there because sometimes it's hard for people to think about the things they must have, and it's easier to think in the negative first. Like, oh, I cannot have a micromanaging boss. Cannot have that. That's one of mine. Those are the things that absolutely do not work for you. They are non-negotiables. Any questions on those 3 categories? I think they're pretty clear. Great. So is it okay if we take a minute for folks just to fill out a couple of things? Is that okay just to take a couple of minutes? Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay, I see shaking of heads. Awesome.
Yes, please.
Awesome. It's just a better exercise when people take a couple of minutes to go through and do that. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to do that while I have a sip of water. I hear scribbling. I like it. That means someone's working. Awesome. Cool. You're like, maybe not. That goes in the wrong that's in the wrong category. Does everybody, I'm just wondering, do we think we have at least a couple things in each category, at least a little bit filled out? Yeah?
Yeah, I have one in each category at least.
Great. So would it be okay if we opened up the channels for people to participate with this, to share some of their answers if they're willing? Would that be okay? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, for people who are outside, if you want, feel free to just, I don't know, say it as a question.
Yeah, great.
Or come on in, because I think we have space. I think we have one more.
Cool. So does anyone want to share one of their, from any category?
I'll share.
Yep.
Well, I definitely agreed with you with the micromanaging boss. I mean, like, it's not that like I wouldn't necessarily put up with it. I have, but it's something that at my last job I couldn't stand, and I would prefer not to have to relive it.
Oh, great.
But on the like-to-haves, I would definitely like to work on multiple projects, and I would like to be able to have some creative expression in the project, like the ability to feel like I'm being creatively expressive in my work.
Oh, that's great. That's really, really great. Those are really great examples. Thank you so much. That's great. How was that for you? Were those things that came off the top of your head, or was it something you had to kind of think about a little bit? I know you had the can't stand, but for the other ones.
For the other ones, I mean, it's really just like bare bones. Like must-have is like, I'm generally getting into this to try to find a line of work that I can, like fully, a livable salary is pretty much my only must-have. But like as far as like-to-haves, like creative expression is. And being challenged and not getting bored is really my like-to-have. So it all came off the top of my head like right away.
Oh, good. That's great. Obviously, you probably spend some time, or you know yourself well enough, or you've been through job searches before, where you've figured that out. Anyone else have something they want to share? Their list, or even or a question too? I'd take either.
It looks like David has one. Susan, are you able to see on the Q&A app what people have posted?
No, I can't see. I cannot see that now.
Okay.
Sorry.
You can, if you hover your mouse over the left-hand side of the Hangout, you get a pull out with a Q&A speech bubble.
Oh, there's the Q&A. Let me see. Aha! Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm so focused on my content that I haven't taken time to play with this. Okay, cool. Okay. Oh, great. Oh, I love that. I want to start off in an environment where learning is promoted. That is a fantastic one. Great job, David. I love that. That's so great. Must have. Okay. Like to have free perks. Okay, cool. Okay. That's great. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out to me, Dan. Great. So does anybody have a question, or did anybody get stumped on this one?
Yeah, I had a question about, like, I guess the minimum salary kind of thing was kind of like where do I put that? It's like there's like a certain number, I guess, that you want to put in like to have or must have, but I guess that's something that you need to do some research on to see what the market's like and what the industry is offering. And
that's a really good question. Well, yeah, I mean, so I do think that, you know, when I put must-have in here, I'm saying let's go with a minimum at least. I mean, you know, you can go for the moon, but you know, a lot of you are basically starting in a new field, so sometimes it's hard. It's just harder. Let's just be honest. It's harder until we proved ourselves to go really high. I'm not saying don't. Absolutely not. I absolutely believe we should advocate for our worth, and we'll talk more about our worth in a minute. But I would say, yeah, do some research. The last research, one of the sites I've used is salary.com. I don't even know if they still have that kind of information, and perhaps, you know, Dan and Eric have other suggestions. But doing some research and then thinking about your own, your own needs. But here's what I also do. And I do this now that when I run my business, if someone asks me for a project, they ask me for work, I always intuitively know the number that's not going to make me bitter and frustrated. You know what I mean? Like I have a number where I'm like, below this, I'm going to be bitter really fast. So I call it like the bitter number, right? What's the bitter number? Below that, you are going to be bitter, not a happy employee. So that's for the folks who are a little maybe more, like to tap into their intuition and things like that. But does that help a little bit to think about it in that way?
Yes, thank you.
I feel like the bitter number is a good entry in the can't stand column if you're hurting for things there.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Below this, I will be so angry and I'm not going to be productive for you. So I think that salary is a really tough one, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in negotiation, but I'm glad that you brought that up because it's a big one. I mean, we certainly, in some ways, that one could almost stand apart outside of your must-have category because, let's face it, we all have to work. We all have to make a certain amount of money to live. My brother works in the sports information field, and it is so hard to live. He has 10 years of experience, and he is still slugging it out with these salaries that are just ridiculous. And in his field, it's definitely a different, place. But in the technology industry, there's many more opportunities. So, any other questions or thoughts on this exercise? Was anyone surprised by what they discovered or what they wrote down?
Yeah. Other than the salary, which I wasn't sure where to how to deal with that. I had a lot of like to haves, and one or two can't stands. So that was interesting. Like my like to have column was like a lot. So
yeah. Was that surprising to you that your like to have column would be so big?
Yeah, it was quite surprising. The must have, I didn't have too many. It was just like the scheduling kind of thing.
Cool.
And and the minimum salary, I guess, or the bidder number. But other than that, yeah.
Oh, that's good. I'm just going to say you did it right. Your column, the like to have column, should be really quite big.
Okay.
Right? It should be big. That should be the biggest column in there. Because also the other thing is your can't stand column can get so big that you're, basically writing yourself out of a job. Right? So like to have, that column is really good. Now, if you want extra bonus points just for career development, doesn't get anything with me, but you can also prioritize your like to have column as well. If you want to go that far, like if it's that big, you can go through and prioritize a little bit more. So, and I just want to talk a little bit, a couple other things I forgot to mention, I'm so sorry. Other things that you might, if some of you are having a hard time thinking about kinds of things that you might want startup experience, or you might want equity, you might want time for side projects. Mentoring, maybe opportunity to learn a very particular language. So those are just some other ideas, just in case anybody had a hard time getting started with those. Cool. So if we're all good on that, we can go forward to the next one. So actually, before I do that, let me just wrap up. Knowing what you're looking for is really important, and I think a lot of times we think we know, but unless we write it down on a piece of paper, it gets really fuzzy. I actually did this the first time I was looking for a house with my partner, and he said, "Oh, I'm super flexible. You're the hard one. Whatever." And then we looked at 4 places, and he was like, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. And so that's how this was born, actually. I started with him, and I said, okay, we're going to write down this list. And we ended up finding a place. The next time we looked at a place, we found the perfect place. So that's kind of where this like grew out of. But I think you have to write it down. So for those of you who didn't do the exercise, and I hope everybody did, make sure that you write it down and you have it really, really clear. So the next thing, hang on one second, sip of water. The next thing I want to talk about is knowing your worth. And this is a really interesting conversation, I think, for a lot of folks who are either starting new in a field or transitioning from another field, because they feel like, oh, well, what worth do I have? Maybe I'm just new, I'm just starting to code, and I don't really feel like I have a lot of worth. I hope none of you feel that way. But if, in case you do, let's talk a little bit more about the whole worth thing. And I think Dan and Eric said that you guys have talked about this before, and hopefully everybody is feeling pretty good about themselves. But let's talk a little bit more about the way I look at knowing your worth is knowing that you bring more than just your coding skills. And so now I want you guys, if you have another sheet of paper, turn it over, find another section. Can you tell I come from a line of teachers? It's like, okay, class, I can't help it. Okay, so the other thing that when you're thinking about your worth is I want you to think about things like this. Your past experiences, right? Other jobs you've had, even if you are, let's say even if you are relatively young. I don't know how old the youngest person is here, and we don't need to out them. But you know, even if you are relatively young and you feel like you don't have professional experiences, my sense is that you've volunteered or you've taken a job or you've done something. I want you to think about things like talent, natural things that you're doing. You know, and some examples of this stuff is like some other things you bring are like problem solving, interpersonal skills, project management, even being self-directed, you know, being self-motivated. So I want you to take a minute and think about the other skills that you bring and write them down, please. Try to see if you can get at least 5. More is better. The other skills that you bring to an employer besides coding. Sorry for the coughing. I don't mean to disturb you.
Not a problem.
I caught that cold that's been going around, and so, you know, fall has begun.
It is probably. Yeah, I bet it's the back to school wave, right? You know,
right, exactly.
Everyone's kids go to school and get everyone else sick, like in the coming weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Thanks, kids. Okay, I still see some heads rather than eyeballs, which is cool. Okay. I'm going to give just a couple more seconds here. Really think about something that's really unique or different or interesting about you, too. And while you're still thinking, I'll tell you a little bit about the way that I'll give you examples of myself. So I bring a lot of interpersonal skills. I also bring a lot of self-direction. I mean, obviously I have my own business, right? So I'm pretty self-motivated. I have to be, otherwise I'm not going to have clients and I'm not going to eat. But one of the things that I always, you know, when I was looking for jobs that I would tell people is I'm a really good bridge. I know how to get people from different groups to talk to each other, or I know how to translate between them. So when I first started working in technology, I had a team of 7 technologists, a designer, and me. And so I had to try to get them to talk, and I didn't understand anything about coding. Now I'm a baby developer. I'm still learning, but at the time I knew nothing about it. And it was because I understood how to talk other people's languages and build that bridge that really allowed me, I think, to excel in my career. So that just gives you an example of something unique. So I'm wondering, does anyone want to share, if you feel comfortable, something that you bring that you think is unique or different, or that an employer would find really attractive? Oh no.
I don't know if it's unique, but
It's okay. It can be anything.
Okay. I consider myself an okay writer. Like I
Cool.
know how to write pretty well, I think.
That's
I don't
great.
know.
Right. So tell me a little bit more about how that writing shows up and how you might use that.
Okay, so my past experiences with writing, I mean, I had to write a thesis, so like I guess it's more specifically technical writing.
Great.
So maybe in when I'm applying for jobs, I can say that I'm maybe practice with documentation or something, with code documentation or something like that.
See, that is unique. That's a unique skill. I'm going to tell you right now, that's unique.
Okay.
Right? That's great. So that's a great skill. Oh, that's fantastic, right? Documentation. I mean, come on, companies. We've all read about it, heard about it, right? Documentation is a problem, and even anecdotally, developers are not always seen as the most communicative bunch, or people who don't want to go back and do the documentation. They just want to keep going. That's a fantastic example, and that is a unique skill. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Anyone else want to share something that they wrote down?
I'll go.
Great.
When I actually put out a resume and like a cover letter and everything a while ago, and part of what I wrote was about the correlation between like my musical knowledge, having gone to school for music composition and coding. Like just like the correlation between like the creative aspect and the mathematical aspect, and that's definitely something that I feel like like it's not something that everybody has, and I would probably be like a specific skill.
Yeah, and so how do you think you would use that? How would it inform you when you went to an employer? How does it influence you?
Well, like for the documentation, as an example, part of what I wrote in the cover letter was that like documentation is a lot like writing manuscript. Everything has to be written in such a way that a player can sit down and play things exactly like it was intended by the composer. Much like if you're reading through API documentation, you need to be able to understand exactly how you need to use it to get the desired effects. So.
Oh, that's great. Too, and with music, and particularly composing, is very complex, and it's very technical and detailed, right? Mm-hmm. I'm a former music major, so I know. I spent a semester trying to learn how to compose music. Mm-hmm. I didn't do great at it. Hence, I was not a music major. But yeah, so that's another piece to it. I think that is a very unique skill. That's great. That's a fantastic example.
Cool.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there any other, that are different, or anyone who just wants to share anything? It's okay if you don't want to, but I think it's great to hear what other kind of skills that they bring. Anyone? Okay. Cool. I know I put people on the spot. Is there any questions about this knowing your worth piece, the piece that we've been talking about? Any questions I can answer on it? No? Pretty straightforward?
Hi, Susan. I have a question.
Yeah.
So, basically, I didn't come out anything unique, but I guess my question is, let's say I list out like I can say I'm a self-motivated. Mm-hmm. I'm a fast learner, but
yeah, that's great.
Is there like a good way to show this soft skills on my resume?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just list those things on your resume, it doesn't mean anything, right?
It doesn't. Yeah, and who am I talking to right now?
Oh, I'm Shin.
Shin. Okay, that's who I thought it was. Some of you are not moving at all in your so I can't tell who's
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought that might be you. I was trying to discern. Can you tell me an example of a time when you maybe used your fast learning skills and the fast learning skills had an impact on a company you were working with? Can you think of a time?
For example, if I'm gonna get a job in a company, since right now we're learning the backend development using Rails.
Yep.
And front end using Angular.
Yep.
But the company I'm gonna working for, they require you use some other tools other than those. So I guess it's gonna be good skills to or good thing to have once you work for them. Like it only took you say a couple of weeks or a couple of months to catch up. That's gonna be great, right?
It's absolutely great. And so there's two ways that you can this is a great question, by the way. So there's a couple things that you can do to demonstrate this. Obviously, once you're in the interview, your interpersonal skills are going to come off. You can give examples of maybe even how in code school, how you learned fast or, took something on or you mentored somebody else, right? So absolutely, once you're in the interview, I feel pretty confident that you'll be able to demonstrate that. Just demonstrate it right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But interpersonal skills like listening and picking up and all those sorts of things. In terms of your resume, I would think about specific times in your career, in your life, where you've learned something fast, and I would try to find a way to represent that on your resume, right? Some way to have a one of your your bullet points that would describe that. Does that make sense? I mean, I would in order to get you one, we would have to spend a lot of time on it. But I'm just trying to give you the core of it, and I can't. Yeah, I would just say think about a time when that was a real benefit to somebody, or that it improved things for other people, that you learned fast, because I think that is an important skill, right? If you're going to have to learn other languages and catch up fast, that's an incredible skill. And by the way, your skills don't always have to be unique. I'm sorry if I put that out there. Any skills are great. My sense is that they're probably unique in the way that you put them out there, but that's a great skill. So does that help a little bit to think about? Like one of my examples, I'm a fast learner too. I pick up stuff really fast. And one of my examples that I said in an interview once when someone asked me about that was I went through a program that taught people how to do what's called behavioral interviewing. If anyone knows what this is, it's the worst kind of interview. It's where people ask you questions and they don't respond at all. Tell me about a time when you worked really hard. About how many hours a week do you work, right? It's that kind of interviewing. And I finished first in my class, and I finished with the highest rates in my class, right? So that was an example that I would have given somebody in an interview where my fast learning paid off, and then they were able to put me to use, and the client could make more money from me because I got out of the program and went into work right away. Does that help at all, Shin?
Yeah, definitely. That helps a lot. Thank you, Suzan.
Of course. Does anyone else have any questions about this stuff? I think this is really important. So if there's any other questions on it, anyone?
I have a question, about as far as skills, would being, even if it's not necessarily totally fluent, would being bilingual be something that is generally important in the tech world?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Who am I talking to? Who's this?
My name's Chris. I'm the globe, the puzzle.
Oh, the globe. I was thinking it was the globe I was talking to. Awesome. Okay, I'm looking at the globe. So, absolutely, right? That again is a unique skill, and what I mean by that is just something that separates you from someone who can just write some code. Right? That's a fantastic skill. I also imagine that. How did you learn the skill of another language? Was it your native language and is English your second language, or how did you?
No, I went to Spain for 2 years, and I didn't really know that much Spanish before I went there, but it was I intensely learned it while I was there. So.
I think that's great because one, it shows that you can, that you've heard, right, that if you pick up languages, like spoken languages fast, they say there's some correlation with picking up other languages fast, like with coding languages. I don't know, some of you are kind of nodding. That's what they say. So I think that that's a great benefit. Also that you understand cultural. You know, you lived in another culture for 2 years and you got around without knowing the language before you got there. That's pretty great, right? So that you could pick up and join a new culture, which means it's going to ease your way into a team and into the company culture that you know how to immerse yourself into a culture quickly.
Cool.
Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's it's good to know like how to use that in talking to somebody in like an interview setting. So that's very helpful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know I might be belaboring this a little bit, but I think it's hard for us to see ourselves in reality, right? We think, oh, well, that's just so easy for me. That can't be a skill because it's so easy. But that's actually why it's a skill, is because it's so easy for you. And so it's funny, I can tell people like, is this a skill? Is it important? So spending time thinking about like how would that benefit people, and I would even say ask each other. Like if you get stuck and you can't figure out how to use this in an interview, go ask one of your other classmates. They'll be able to help you figure it out. Cool. All right. Unless we have any other questions, we can go on to the last one, which is going to be a little more free form. The last part, and we're good? Can I thumbs up? Yeah, good to go. Cool. Okay, awesome. I got the nod. Okay, the last one is knowing how to negotiate for yourself. And so this one I wanted to leave a little bit more open-ended, and we can leave time for, gosh, I guess I'm talking a lot, but hopefully this has been interactive. Rather than lecture, I'm not a good lecturer. I'm good at interacting. So the third one about negotiating. Basically the first two, if you can, as you probably can tell, build upon this, right? If you know what you're looking for and you know what's really important to you, right? That like to have list is going to help you immensely in the negotiation process, right? Let's say somebody, you know, they can't really, they meet your base salary, but they can't meet the salary you really want. Then you have that like to have list that you can negotiate for something else, and that like to have list, which is part of why I say you may want to prioritize that, right? If you know what you're worth, you're going to go into that negotiation feeling like you have room, that you're a player in this, you're an equal partner, not just someone who is begging for a job and they're in charge. So that's how those two things are going to combine in terms of negotiating. And that's all I really have on this section. And I'm willing to, you know, answer questions or talk about whatever else you guys want. But that's how my system works. That's how I've always done it, is to know what I want, feeling good about myself, and then go into negotiations with armed with all of this information. Do we have any questions about negotiation or anything?
Yeah, hi Susan. I feel like it's difficult to really negotiate a high salary when we're going to these entry-level jobs. Like, it feels really awkward to have to like name your price. I mean, you can always do research and you can basically find out that entry-level job in my area is what, like 50 to 60,000. So, like, what negotiation do you even do? Is there am I just going to claim that I've done my market research, and if they go below, that it's like a no-go?
And do you mean particularly on the salary?
Yeah, on the salary. Like when I'm negotiating salary.
I mean, I think
it's awkward.
Yeah. And I purposely left this open because I figured there's a lot of questions, because negotiation is hard for basically all of us. It's hard for pretty much almost every person. So in terms of the salary thing, I really think that there's like the bidder number, but then there's also the, you know what, I'm going to feel pretty fairly represented number, right? So I would encourage you to have a couple different numbers in your head and in your heart, right? I know that might sound strange to a bunch of software developers, but like in your gut, in your heart, what really would make you feel pretty happy about going to work. And the reality is you can choose to say no, right? I think that's a very individual decision. So I'm not going to say to you that if it's not X number, you should walk away in disgust or even walk away. I think that's where you really have to know what's most important to you. It could be that you say, you know what, this is right above my bidder number, but I really want the experience, and I'm going to dig in for X amount of time, and I'm going to do this until I've gotten enough experience. And here are the 3 things that I want to get from this experience. Am I making sense? I don't know your name. I know who's talking. I'm talking to. You have a blue shirt in your picture, but what's your name?
Yes, Garrett.
I'm sorry.
It's Garrett.
Garrett. Sorry, the microphone moved. Does that make sense about what I'm saying?
I mean, pretty much. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of factors coming into play besides salary. It's just I just feel awkward negotiating it. Like I feel like I have knowing that worth thing is important, but it's just still with entry-level jobs feels awkward because I just want more. I want experience more than anything. I feel like experience, just getting a job and having experience is almost just as good as like an extra 10 grand in salary.
Well, and you know what, Garrett, that is such a great attitude to have, and I think it is honestly point on, because we think number is the big thing to negotiate for, but actually there's so many other things, right? If we look at our list, there's so many other things, and I think that getting an entry-level job, experience is critical. It really sets the path of your career. It sets it up for you, and it really builds a foundation. I want to be clear, I am not saying take a low-paying job just because you have to. I am not saying that at all. All I'm saying is that it's really great that you are clear that I want to gain experience, right? Knowing why, like the biggest why, what you really, really want to get from your job is critical and will help you. So, you know, I think it is awkward in terms of, I don't know if you guys do this, but practicing negotiating is great. And I'm going to tell you about something that maybe sounds a little silly. There's a couple things, but one I'm going to tell you about is I read this post by his name is Julian, I believe, Smith, and I can give you guys I can send to Eric and Dan the post that I'm thinking about. It's about basically negotiate. He said, for 30 days, I want you to negotiate for something every single day. I mean, a seat on the bus. You know, whatever, extra French fries. Big French fry fan over here. So, you know, I did that one day. But in mine, I did this, and I negotiated, because I was feeling unconfident at the time. I was re-entering, you know, marketing, and I was feeling, who knows, you know, and the economy was a little bit down. And so I negotiated. I said, you know, I was at a shoe store. I love shoes. So my friend and I were buying 3 pairs of boots. They were not cheap. And I said, you know, do you guys have a bulk discount? You know, since we're buying 3 pairs of shoes. And they're like, no, but okay, we'll give you 10% off. And I was like, awesome, great. My friend was really happy because she bought a $500 pair of boots, right? So that was a good amount of money. So it might sound silly, but like if you feel uncomfortable to get around that awkwardness, negotiate for tiny little things. You know, ask for a different seat with somebody, ask someone to trade seats with you, any little thing to make you feel more comfortable. Does anybody feel like they would do that? Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was also going to say that, you know, I totally understand the idea of being uncomfortable with sort of negotiating your position. I mean, it's always a little bit uncomfortable to negotiate,
Yep.
and I think that part of understanding kind of the theory of negotiation is realizing that it's not about like you taking away from someone else. It's that you have overlapped where, you know, they want you up to a certain point and you are a good fit for them past a certain point, and then in the middle is a zone where both of you would be happy.
Yes.
And you know, like usually the whole idea is that like when they give you an offer, it's usually down at like the lowest end of where they would accept you, but there's almost always additional room above it where it's like both of you are happy because like they would be willing to hire you and you would be willing to work for them. So the idea is the whole point of negotiation is to try and figure out how can you kind of move within that middle ground where you're both actually happy, because it's never just a number. It's never just one number is the only way that the two of you are happy. It's always some sort of range, and maybe it's not about the number. Maybe the number is stuck, but there's other things like, you know, negotiating you know, like vacation time, or negotiating like, you know, time from a mentor, or you know, whatever it is. I mean, you can be creative, but the whole idea is again that like, you know, it's not about this idea that like you're grabbing value that you don't have. It's kind of just understanding that like they want you too, Like that's the reason that they're offering to hire you. And almost certainly there's a gray zone where in the middle, like you're both happy to be working together. So it's just about kind of trying to find your way into that gray zone.
That's such a great point. I'm so glad you said that about like the principles of negotiation. It's absolutely so true. I mean, and you're right about that, right? That there's always this zone of negotiation, and it's not always a number, but sometimes it is. And frankly, if you can't find that zone, then maybe it's really not a right fit for you, right? Like I don't think that's pretty rare. It's happened to me once in my career, and it was not a good fit. I learned that very quickly by my mistakes. But I think that's such a great point about that zone. It's great. Yeah. I hope we helped a little bit, Garrett. You know. So other questions on negotiation or anything else? Oh.
Well, David actually had a question in the Q&A that's, if you actually wouldn't mind reading it aloud.
Sure. Yeah. One question that I get in pretty much every interview is, what is your experience with Ruby on Rails? How should this question be answered? I focus on showcasing my portfolio, but they seem to be disillusioned when they see I have no production level experience. Got it. So I'm just looking at this. And feel free, if anyone else wants to chime in, feel free as I'm reading this question.
Yeah, Susan, I know we talked about how you don't really get too much into the technical side of interviewing, but any more qualitative help you have for David would be appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, here's the thing. Like, this is going to be asked, right? How much experience with it do you have? And I think that if they're a little disillusioned, this where you might bring in other things like I learn fast, I work really hard, I make sure that I get things done. I think this is where, because the reality is sometimes you're not going to have as much experience, right? Okay, I'm really direct, so I'm going to say something direct that I hope I don't offend anybody, or the program might kick me out and never talk to me again. But I'm gonna be really direct. There are a lot of companies that don't want to hire junior developers, right? They all want the experienced developer, right? They want that expert. They want the guru. But I do think that is changing, and I think that it's a matter of, just like we were talking about. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, good. About finding that gray area, finding the right companies. You want to find a match for the companies who understand what else you're bringing, right? The other, your worth, what other things you're bringing to the table, and combining that with your ability to learn or work really hard. Like, I call myself a bulldog. I'm a bulldog with a bone. When I want something for somebody, I am a bulldog. I will not stop. That's what that's probably what I would say. And I don't know if this is helpful at all, because the technical is not my deep expertise, but I hope that helps a little. Yeah, okay. I'm getting some nods. Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I would also say you can trumpet your small wins as well.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think a lot of the preparation for talking about things is to try and figure out how do you make small things sort of extrapolate into bigger things, and one of them I would say would be do whatever it takes to try and make things for other people at some point. If you can get like 3 users to use something, like you officially have like something that other people are using that is a production site.
Good point. Really good point.
I mean, it doesn't matter how many users there are. It just kind of matters that you have to actually serve their needs, and it can't suck.
That is such a good point.
So it's like it's kind of like there are always little kernels. I mean, you're never like, unless you're in a there's this funny thing. It's like people only want developers who have scaled giant projects using technologies that have never been used to scale giant projects. I mean, it's like everyone has these unrealistic expectations, and really it comes down to sort of like understanding, like, what are they really asking, and like they're really saying, like, can you come into our technology stack and not break things, and like, can you be reliable as someone who thinks about production level issues? And it's like, well, if you've had to think about production level issues, even if it's only in a very small scenario, I mean, that matters. Like that is still that kind of that skill set that they're looking for. It may not be like the best the full signal that they want. But again, it's like you do have those types of things, and I think it is just finding those sort of reverse engineering what they're really asking for, and then figuring out either what have you already done that shows off those qualities, or what can you do in sort of the shortest amount of time to kind of like show those qualities.
Well, yeah, and I love what you're saying, too, because if you do, let's say something you said, even with 3 users, you do some sort of side project, it shows a lot of initiative, that you really care about this and you want to learn and you want to grow in those skills, and that you're already trying to simulate that for yourself before even taking a job on. So I think I like your answer. That was good. So I know we're at 6, and I don't know if we need to stop right on the dot, or if I'm happy to stay and answer any other questions. I'll leave it up to you guys.
Are there questions that you guys have?
I do have a question. What about, this is kind of on Garrett's question, about the, taking a job and negotiating. Should you take like the first job, like that's decent, or should you hold out wait for other jobs? Like, what would you say about that?
That's a great question. And your name is again?
Mike.
Mike. Okay, great. You're in the white shirt, I think, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, awesome. It's very important to me that I know who I'm talking to. So I think it's a great question, Mike. I mean, I think there's a couple of things that play into it, right? So one, you want to think about what's going on around you. Let's say if you really want to be in a geographical area, I would look at how plentiful jobs are in wherever you're living, right? If you want to work, you're not willing to do remote, or remote is not a possibility. So I would definitely keep that into factors. Obviously, other thing you're going to factor in is, I mean, let's just be frank, financially, how long can you afford to look, right? Personally, I don't like to take the first job I'm offered, but I have had to do it, and I've done it in the past. So a couple times it's worked out awesome, once it didn't. So, lessons learned there. But, I mean, I think I would go back to, again, after you've done sort of the analytical sort of thinking about it, I would go back to, like, your gut, right? Am I taking this job because I feel desperate and I want to get one right away? Or is it really the right fit for me? And is it going to allow me to start off my career as a professional developer in a way that will give me room to grow and build a solid foundation for me? I really think, at the end of the day, we always know whether it's the right decision or the wrong one. And personally, I wouldn't go against that gut if it was saying you're being scared. It's a knee-jerk reaction. I mean, does that help at all? Kind of explain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was also going to add that the point at which you do have that first offer, you have the most power at any point that you're going to have in your entire job search. And that means that you have the power to negotiate. That means that you also have the power to, and I think we're going to have a kind of a full lecture on this stuff very shortly, because it's apparently becoming pretty relevant to a number of people. When you get that offer, that's your point where you should actually be going back to all the other jobs that you've been applying to that no one has gotten back to you, and say, hey, like, the clock is officially ticking. You now have 24 hours, or you now have a week, or whatever it is, to get back to me with your answer as well.
Yes.
So it's also like, the decision is not even quite so black and white as like, here's an offer, I have it, do I take it, do I not take it?
Yes.
Because, like, that's a very, very interesting position, because when you have that offer, you need to go back to every single person who's not said no to you explicitly, and who you're interested in working for, and say, look, like, have an offer, I'm very interested in what you're doing, I need to know. I need to know, and then all of a sudden your options start to blossom, because nobody does anything without time, without some sort of clock ticking down to zero.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, we're a good counterpoint for each other. I like that. I think it's a really great point, and it is why one thing we haven't really talked about is, I don't know what you guys have to say at the school officially, but I would say have more things in the hopper than you think you might want to take. Only having 1 or 2 potential jobs, is not a position where you'd want to be, and it's not a position of strength, right? So having more things in the hopper of things that you really like will put you in better chances to negotiate and feel confident. So, yeah. Any
I
yeah.
I have a question on the note of salary and being wary of salary, like offered salary in correlation to how much you may or may not be in over your head. For instance, if the company is willing to offer you, like as like an entry level type position, if the company is willing to offer you an amount of money that you feel like is more than you're worth, should you be wary that you might be getting yourself into something where you're in over your head? Not to say that like I'm necessarily timid about being in over my head, but at the same time, I don't want to get myself into a situation where it's going to reflect badly on me as experience because I was in over my head.
Got it. Have you guys talked about this at all at the school before I answer?
Not officially, no.
Okay, if you want to jump in, more than welcome to. I mean, I have thoughts, but if you want to jump in.
Let's hear yours first, and I'll give mine.
Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. So, I mean, I think this is an interesting sort of situation. I mean, I think that, I mean, you could potentially get in over your head, and I think that salary is one indication, right? But there's a couple reasons why. And this has happened to me once. I got in over my head because actually the person sold the position really wrong. And the second day I was like, oh, this is so not what I do. I'm over my head because that's not what I do. And it was funny because I saw the number 2 candidate later, and I told her what the job was, and she went, oh my God, they totally sold that job wrong. So that was the case. Like, I often think it's like there's a miscommunication or a mismatch if it's truly an oversell. Like, did you oversell yourself, or did they miscommunicate the position? I think those things happen. In terms of the salary thing, I mean, it could also be that maybe you're undervaluing yourself, right? A lot of people coming out actually undervalue themselves, and they don't really know what the market is worth. I mean, because the salary could also be higher than you're expecting, maybe because, to be frank, maybe you're going to have to work your butt off. You know what I mean? Maybe it's one of those like grinding companies where they pay people well because they know they're just going to grind you into the earth. So I think that there's a number of different reasons why the salary expectation might be higher than what you're thinking. And if it were me, I might want to think about why that is. You know, given some of those some of the areas that we've mentioned.
That's kind of what I asked because I know that it's kind of like it's like a seesaw. You know, like I mean, you obviously want the higher salary, but at the same time, you know, like you don't want to find yourself in over your head and have the experience of that situation reflect badly on your career or on your resume or whatever. But at the same time, like, I mean, I'm not afraid to work as hard as I possibly can. And I just, you know, it's also, you know, like, I mean, I've never really gotten into an industry where, you know, people have a tendency to throw around numbers that, you know, like for salaries, even like entry level or junior positions where it's like, wow, to me, that seems like a lot of money given like the way, you know, like the jobs that I've worked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, like it's also still been a question that I've had for a while. You know, like.
Yeah. Well, so I think there are a lot of things at play, and one of them is actually consistent with what we were talking about before, which is that it's not always about you, and a lot of it's about the market that you're going into. And I mean, the fact is that as a developer, you're entering a different market. You don't know what the people next to you are going to be making. Like, they're probably making, like, when you see salary visibility, you realize everybody's making a lot more than you thought they were. That often happens. I mean, like, this is a career where developers in San Francisco make a comfortable 6 figures. You know, I mean, like, that's and entry level positions will get up to that. You know, I mean, obviously it's highly dependent on a lot of things. That's not the only thing that matters, but I mean, it's just kind of like don't keep the baggage of like the salaries that you've been paid previously. Like that's an anchor. I mean, like, you are now free floating in a much different market where your skills are much more valuable than you've ever probably had in any other position. And so again, like, you need to kind of think about not like sort of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't, you know, what am I worth? It's what is the market for my skills, and that's what you need to benchmark yourself against. It has nothing to do with anything else. I mean, just divorce. I mean, you need to like pick yourself out of yourself and focus on on like you are just like what would you say if your friend was a developer and was like, hey, I'm a developer. Like what do I do if X Y Z? So that I think is just one sort of psychological hack that you just kind of have to go back to again and again and again. Just realize like I'm in a market that they need developers. I have valuable skills. These companies make a lot of money off of developing. I mean, like it's a technology product. It's like that's the whole thing. That's the whole reason that developers are valuable. They solve problems well. They learn fast, and they have a very valuable commercial skill set.
That's a great point, right? I love that, like the psychological baggage. That's awesome. I mean, that's awesome because that is largely what it is. I think also doing that research on what the market will bear in your area and for the jobs you're looking for will help you reset that barrier for yourself, right? It will put the bar at a different place.
Right. And I think to your other point is, I mean, you were talking about kind of like, are you getting into a position over your head? One core thing is, do you bet on yourself? And I think everyone's here because they've bet on themselves. And that's one thing. I mean, do you tend to get in situations and tend to rise to the top? I'd say usually it's much better to be in a situation where you're going to be over-challenged than under-challenged. And I mean, hey, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But man, you have some war stories to tell in your next interview and probably a little bit of change in your pocket to keep you going. So I mean, I don't think that there's really a lot of situations, especially as a junior, where you can get some experience and then have it not work out and have it somehow be a negative thing against you. I mean, it's your job is to go out there and just get yourself in the fire and start to harden up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love that. That's great. It's so true.
Yeah, well, it definitely makes me feel better about the situation in general. So.
Yeah.
I would say one of the best though is definitely what Suzan's saying about researching salaries. Understand what the market looks like. Glassdoor has it. I mean, you just Google salary XYZ and search for it in your area, and usually they're low because there's sort of this like long tail average where people don't really get paid that much. I mean, like the average developer salary in the U.S. is very, very different than the average Ruby on Rails developer, which is very different than the average Ruby on Rails developer in a tech hub city. All of these things sort of stack up on top of each other, which again is why this sort of like the San Francisco Bay Area salary situation is where it is. New York City is high. Basically all of these tech hubs have a much different salary situation. So, and the other thing, the final thing is also kind of is this idea of like a junior, like you're not a junior developer. It's like you can be entering into a position as a developer, but calling yourself entry level, you've immediately shortchanged yourself.
So good point. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, it's nobody hires entry level developers. I mean, like that's like a job title you don't even really see that much of, because like it implies a level of ineptitude that you guys frankly don't have, and so the other psychological hack is just realizing that like the job of a developer is to learn lots of new stuff, and you have a solid foundation. And again, as long as you're able to kind of build a couple little production widgets, serve a couple of users, like you have the core skill sets that you need. The first 6 months on the job, you're going to be over your head. You'll be learning on the weekends, nights and weekends. But it's like, I mean, and then you'll start to be floating up to the surface, and you'll be a little ducky on top of the surface looking, and then you realize, oh my goodness, I get it, and I realize that like everyone else around me is sort of in the same boat, So I think a lot of this is kind of the anxiety of being outside looking in, but I think once you're inside, you start to realize that it's I mean, like you are a developer. That I mean, this whole idea of junior is definitely also something that's working against you. This like I am a junior developer.
Yeah.
Especially if you've worked before. I mean, it can be a little bit more tricky if you've never worked before to justify not being a junior developer. But if you have worked in another career, like you don't have to be a junior. I mean, again, I don't know, I can go on like this forever.
Well, these psychological hacks are really important. I really think like that's a great way for us to sort of. I love that we're talking about this at the end because psychological hacks are so important in the interview process, right? Because it can be harrowing, and you can make it easier for yourself. And I love that idea of calling yourself a developer. Just I'm a developer rather than like entry level or junior. It's a good point.
I do have a question about that though, because there have been recruiters that I talked to that basically as soon as they hear that I haven't worked officially, like there's no professional experience on my resume. I mean, like obviously I've taken courses, classes, and I've made my websites and apps and everything, but there's no concrete professional experience on there. And as soon as they hear that, they say, okay, well, entry level stuff, like they automatically like section you off into that entry level category. And I guess like my question is, like you're saying kind of the opposite of that, but at the same time, if that's how I'm viewed as, like, how do I?
Well, can I pause you for? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sure.
I wanted to say something about recruiters. We haven't talked about recruiters, and I've been one, so I'm going to be direct about it. You have to understand, recruiters are paid upon recs, right? Requisitions. So they are paid, or they're even inside of a company, they are incented about how many people they get into positions, right? So they want the easy people who they can slot in. They want the most experienced person. Recruiters are tough. Anytime you can try to bypass a recruiter, awesome. Do that. And I hope this is not against the advice you're giving. Okay, good. Okay, awesome. But recruit, and we don't have time for it, but I have lots of stories about my bad interactions with recruiters, including one man who threw up my resume in the air and said, "There's no story here," and walked out of the room. I'm like, okay. So I stopped looking at recruiters after that. But so make sure that, like, recruiters can be helpful, but I would say that going direct to like hiring managers or other ways are going to be good on your self-esteem, and you're going to go right directly to the source rather than to recruiters, if that makes sense. And hopefully I was not against what you do at the school.
No, and I would also say I put recruiters in the same bucket as a lot of people at maybe some of the larger, more traditional, slower-moving companies, which is that they tend to use credentials as a signal. They need to check boxes, and that's kind of the like stepwise pattern that gets people into jobs at those companies. Frankly, like those aren't the roles that you're likely to find yourself into.
Right.
It's just you're coming from a non-traditional angle. You're not optimized for traditional paths.
Yep.
So when you try to go through a traditional path, sometimes it's not going to work. I mean, you're going to sort of get bucketed wrong, or the people aren't going to appreciate your unique and special snowflakeness, which is why a lot of the quest that you guys have to undertake is to look for those side doors, is to look for those companies that are a little bit less traditional, faster moving, have a stronger need for developers. Which is why it's good to be learning skills like Rails or JavaScript and Angular, because the companies who have embraced those technology stacks tend to be ones that are moving a little bit faster or a little bit more ahead of the curve, and those are the ones that tend to be more willing, because there's more of a talent crunch, that they tend to be more willing to look kind of non-traditionally. So, it's like when you talk to recruiters, they tend to be the box checkers, and you're not going to win a box checking battle with someone who has more boxes to check.
No. Yeah, they are. They're totally like this. They have this total pattern recognition. So yeah, great point. You want to look for different companies who can slot you in and can see what makes you different. Cool. All right, I've gone way over on you guys. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep talking. I love the topic and I want to be helpful. So.
Oh, it's great. Maybe one more if there's one more lurking out there.
Can I ask something real quick? I guess Donald can go.
Yeah, I had a question when my mic was unplugged again. What I was going to say is, I only have an associate's degree, and some jobs will say, they want the person to have a bachelor's degree, but I'll be matching a lot of the requirements they want, right? So, is that like a situation where, what would I do if I wanted to apply anyway, and then, it's not like there's going to be any bad thing that happens if they don't like what I had put on my cover letter and resume. Should I even mention my education, like that I don't have a bachelor's degree, or like if they bring it up, how would I talk about that?
Do you want to say something?
I'll bat second again.
Oh, okay, cool. I don't know. I'm like, I get to bat first. So, in terms of this, I mean, personally, if you have a strong enough sort of like inner constitution, like you're good, sounds like you're okay with rejection, right? I would say go for it. Like, it can't hurt. If it's really a job that you really, really want, I would go for it. I mean, I think particularly in the field of technology, there are a lot of programmers who do not have their degrees. My business partner, for instance, left college after he's a Ruby and Rails developer. He's been doing it for 10 years, left after college after 1 year and after 1 semester and has never heard him. But I would say if you have that inner constitution, go for it. I mean, I certainly wouldn't, obviously, I know you wouldn't, but I would certainly not lie about it or augment, what about it. But I would simply focus on other things about why you're a fit. Now, some companies, I mean, the reality is some companies that say minimum bachelor's degree, sometimes they're willing to give, and sometimes it's more those what we were saying earlier, the traditional companies, and they have boxes that they want to check, and they have a certain sort of thing. But I would really focus on the other things that you bring to the table. If you decided that you wanted to, I would focus on. I would bring other things to the table. I think a lot of times when they put degree in there, I think sometimes it's they use it as a level of sort of. I mean, it sounds wrong, but I think they use it as a little bit of a level of like professionalism. I think also they use it as a way of using for terms, right? That you might understand certain terms. I think, well, this person has these certain terms covered. But I also think at the same time in the technology world that, unless it's, I mean, I suppose, sorry, I'm just like thinking this out loud, but I think there's a lot of software developers who do not have degrees in computer science. So, I think it's an interesting question, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think I would go for it, and I would focus on other things. Do you have some thoughts? I'm just sort of like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the cornerstone of everything comes down to hustle, and to me, hustle means doing everything short of lying, cheating, or stealing to get yourself into there. And I say apply for it anyways. I don't care. I don't care if a company says that they want something I don't have. If it's a job that I want, I'm going to apply to it. It's like too bad for them. Your job is to get far enough into the process to the point where they can see what you can do. Because what you have is what you can do. I mean, you know that you can do amazing things. You know that you've built really cool stuff. Like, you want to talk to a human being, do whatever the hell it takes, short of lying, cheating, and stealing. I mean, again, you can't sort of you can't pad your resume. You can't make things up. Yeah. But like. That doesn't mean you can't be aggressive. And I mean, totally. I think, and hustle hard, and I think part of that is really just kind of sometimes just saying like, okay, well, guess what? Like, you're being unrealistic. I can do the job that, whether, I don't know whether or not you've seen it before. I know every single one of you is someone who's capable of rising to the top very quickly in a heap of your average job candidates, given any kind of equal test, and that includes people who are hired for jobs. I think you'll all find very, very soon that when you're on the job and you get your feet underneath you, that you're gonna find yourself learning faster than your average bear. And so I mean, like, your job is just figure out how to hack through that first filter, that second filter, to get in front of a human being and do whatever it takes.
Totally agreed, right? Be aggressive. If you have that constitution, like, go for it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna shrink from every rejection, you got to work on that. But yeah, totally, go for it. No reason why not to, right?
Oh yeah, well, the psychological hack there is gamification.
Totally.
is actually rejection is a good thing. It's sort of like that idea of negotiating as being kind of a gamified thing as well. Negotiate once a day. Same thing is absolutely true of rejection. Rejection is a great thing to gamify for yourself and say, look, my goal is not actually to like be liked. I mean, the problem that everyone faces, the problem that everyone like, the core of so many of these problems are like, I want to be liked. If you say like why, everyone's like because I want to be liked. I don't want to like look like I'm a failure. I don't know, whatever it is.
I don't want to be the last kid picked for kickball.
Right, and like that's kind of what it always comes back to eventually. If you think deep enough into your own psyche, like, it kind of does eventually come back to that. And so like the one of the best ways to get yourself out of that is to gamify things. And rejection is a great one. So you can kind of say, well, you know what? My goal is actually to try and get rejected X, Y, like 100 times.
Yep.
Like, I mean, and if you make that your goal, all of a sudden it's like this magical, liberating feeling where it's like, whoa. Like, I can do anything, because the metric that I'm shooting for isn't to be liked. It isn't to like have 100% batting average. It's actually the exact opposite. It's to do enough things that I actually have enough rejections to hit my quota. and it's weird, but it works fabulously well.
It totally does. It's like math, right? It's just math, right? I mean, like, get enough rejections. I did that this year with writing. I really wanted to get published, and the first rejection, I'm not kidding you, I cried. Then the second one, I was like, crap, pass me a drink. The third one, I was like, whatever, and I went back to like cleaning my closet. Now I don't care, right? But I did that. That was my hack for this year. It was a growth goal for me to get a professional, something in a particular kind of magazine. So yeah, I think that's absolutely 100% on.
Yeah.
Love that. Love it.
I think we'll have to do a whole series on psychological hacks.
Yes, you should. I mean, those are the best, right?
Real quick, most companies put, like you said, a lot of companies have like all these requirements. I think a lot of companies do the same thing with the likes. Like they would like to have these skills, but realistically, they're looking for like someone with a half of skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They basically don't want people who are overqualified to walk away.
Yeah.
So they're fishing basically.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, and the other thing too is like when you think about it, we all think about like the hardcore skills of the job, but at the other end of the day too, it's also about, do you get along with the team, right? Having interpersonal skills is massive. I think most of us have been around or worked with people that really did not want to work with, right? So I think that you never forget that that's a huge advantage for you, that they, at the end of the day, they want the skills, but they also want the interpersonal, whether they list it or not, is going to be really important.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched it time and time again, watch people be on a performance plan because they didn't have people skills, even though they were an awesome performer. So it's always to your advantage if you can, be a good team player or learn or pitch in or whatever.
Yeah, I think we could have a whole new hangout on people's skills, leveraging people's skills, how to hack people's skills.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this has been so fun, you guys. I mean, my gosh, it's like this is the most fun conversation I've had in all week.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up. But Susan, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. I hope it's been helpful for everyone else who's here.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, you guys.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and I guess maybe afterwards, Susan, I'll reach out, or maybe Dan, and maybe get your contact info if you're comfortable sharing, and so people can say thank you.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. I want to hear about your psychological hacks. I'm writing a book right now, and I have a whole section on basically psychological hacks, but more about like working for yourself and starting a business. But that's awesome. I love that you're going to do a session on that. I think that's so great. All right, you guys, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for letting me go in the afternoon so that in New York I'm not dead tired.
Problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks so much, Susan.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And everyone else, back to the code. See ya.